The Holy Gospel according to Mark. Glory to you, O Lord. The beginning of the good news of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. As it is written in the prophet Isaiah, "See, I am sending my messenger ahead of you, who will prepare your way. The voice of one crying out in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make his paths straight." John the Baptizer appeared in the wilderness, proclaiming a baptism of repentance for the forgiveness of sins. And people from the whole Judean countryside and all the people of Jerusalem were going out to him and were baptized by him in the river, confessing their sins. Now John was clothed in camel's hair, with a leather belt around his waist, and he ate locusts and wild honey. He proclaimed, "The one who is more powerful than I is coming after me. I am not worthy to stoop down and untie the thong of his sandals. I have baptized you with water, but he will baptize with the Holy Spirit." In those days, Jesus came from Nazareth of Galilee and was baptized by John in the Jordan. And as he was coming up out of the water, he saw the heavens torn apart, and the Spirit descending like a dove on him. And a voice came from heaven, "You are my Son, the Beloved. With you I am well pleased." This is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. Please be seated. So I've always wanted to say this. I think Brian covered it. That was really good. So I'm really excited to be here today. It's so nice to see so many faces that I know and some faces that I don't know, and to know that this ministry is in such great hands with such great leaders makes me proud of the time that we shared together, and also just so grateful that reunions get to happen. So thanks, Pastor Reska, for the invitation. It's my honor to be here today, and Tammy's here too. She can wave. I'll embarrass her a little bit. But it's great. It's great to be here. I think Ryan did cover it. He really nailed it. It was awesome. But let's get to it, shall we? So if you can think back to the 1987 classic, The Princess Bride. I think I was in confirmation when that came out. There's a scene in there I want to pull out. It's in a moment when all of the heroes have kind of really met their match. Inigo Montoya, the swordsman, he is defeated by the man in black, who's a better swordsman than he is. Fennec, Andre the Giant, seems like this invincible warrior. He also is defeated by the man in black because he puts him in a sleeper hold. And Vicini, the mastermind behind the whole operation of trying to kidnap the Princess Buttercup, he is defeated by a battle of wits because, unlike the man in black, he did not spend the last few years developing an immunity to iocane power. And even the man in black, who we find out is Wesley, Buttercup's long-lost love, who has come to rescue her from the evil clutches of Prince Humperdinck and his henchman, the six-fingered man. He is captured after they get out of the fire swamp and thrown into the dungeon, where he suffers greatly and is almost dead. Now, it wouldn't be a good fairy tale if it wasn't a happy ending, if the heroes didn't rejoin, if they didn't get back into the mission at hand, if they didn't rescue the princess and defeat the evil prince, and have a big kiss at the end, and everybody lives happy ever after. I mean, that's how good movies are, and funny ones all the more better. But the moment I want to pick out is when they're at the lowest of the lows. The prince is going to marry Princess Buttercup against her will and against Wesley's hope to come and rescue her, because he's down in the dungeon and our other heroes are sulking and feeling sorry for themselves. But they are going to clear the forest for security measures, and we meet Inigo for the second time. Except this time, he is not as on task and on point, looking to avenge his father. He is simply down and out. He's had too much to drink. He smells horrible. He's kind of yelling at everyone. He's waving his sword back and forth when anyone approaches. And he says these words, "Vizzini told me to go back to the beginning." So that's where we are. We live in a very disorienting time and place, as we've all experienced over the last several years now. And I think a day like today, where we hear about the story of Jesus coming out of the water and the Spirit coming to him, and that promise that Ryan reminded us of, that we are God's beloved ones, it's worth going back to the beginning. Now we might think, okay, if I go back to the beginning, what does that mean? Was that like, February of 2020? Was that the beginning? Probably not. Was it the beginning? Well, we left here in 2010. Was that the beginning of something new? It was, but I'm not talking about that either. Is it the beginning of when I met so many of you? Back in 2000, when I was an intern, I had hair then. A different age. But no, I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about growing up in the suburbs of Chicago, even though I know I've told you this before. I mean, you've probably experienced, many of you, this same situation. I mean, I knew back in those days, the early 80s, I mean, I knew all my neighbors. They knew us. We all went to church. And if they didn't go to the same church that I did, which a lot of my neighbors did, they went to the Catholic church on the other side of town. And even those kids and my friends, we all knew each other anyway, because a lot of us went to church schools. I went to the Lutheran school. The other kids went to the Catholic school, but we shared the same bus. That's not the beginning I'm talking about either. That seems like a different world, doesn't it? I'm not even talking about my own baptism, which happened. It's good you remembered your baptism or birthday. I don't know the exact date, but I do know it was the baptism of Jesus in 1976. But I'm not talking about that either. It's time to go back to the beginning. You know, like the beginning. The beginning. Because maybe there we can find some reorientation to the world in which we live. But maybe first, before we do that, just to think a little bit about where we are and where we've come and what challenges we face, which we all know anecdotally, I think. But just to look at it a little bit. Two books I've been looking at recently. One is The Great Dechurching by a couple of guys, Jim Davis and Michael Graham, and a statistician, Ryan Berge. And another book by Ryan Berge, which is about the nuns, the rise of the nuns, not the single women who work for the Catholic Church, but the people that check the box nun when it comes to what religious affiliation are you? So years ago, before I was born, 1972, if you look at the data from that time, the people that marked that box, I don't really belong anywhere, it's not my thing, was about 5% of the US population. By the 90s, when I was in high school, it was about 7%. In 2008, the year we completed this renovation project here, it rose to 14% and everybody freaked out. What does this mean for the future and where are we going and what does this look like as church institutions and as congregations of people trying to live their faith out in the world? Now the new data is going to sound horrible, but it's now up around 30%. If you look at young people between the ages of 18 and 25, these are kind of the where my kids are. It's 1 in 3. If you look at people who are younger than 18, it's actually closer to 40%. So I spend my time with high school boys. That's what I do now. I teach religion class to kids who are mostly interested in hockey. And I get to tell them about Jesus every day. That's my job. But this is the world in which we live, right? It's a different place than that neighborhood in which I grew up. That is not the beginning. But the promises of God, that's the beginning. That's the beginning. So we heard this beautiful passage that Anne read for us from Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. What a beautiful statement. What a beautiful promise. If you were like me when you grew up, or in the context of kind of 20th century life before we entered this new millennium, the conversation was, well, how does that truth of the good news, the truth of God's promises for us, how does that interact with us in a more scientific, enlightened age? And we struggled with that a bit. But the more I've grown to love that passage over the years, the more I've come to see it's much more interesting than that. This is a tradition that's handed off, family to family, community to community, generation after generation, through talking, right? Oral tradition for generations and generations, out by the campfire, around the dinner table. But when these words are written down, in the form we still have, so someone like Anne can read them for us, it's during the time of exile. It's when the whole world is flipped upside down. It's when we're totally disoriented and don't know what the heck is going on. The people at that time had lost their homes, they lost their land, they lost their temple, they lost probably their purpose. What is God even doing with us anymore? And yet that is the time to proclaim in the midst of chaos and disorder and violence and upheaval that God is good, that the created world around us is beautiful and made for us, and that you and I are not kind of leftovers or pushed to the side, but that every single human being, even our enemies, even the people we don't like that much, all of us are made in the likeness and image of God. Isn't that a beautiful statement to make when the world seems like it's totally upside down? It's time to go back to the beginning. Now this gospel is what I love about Mark is it gets right to the point. No Christmas story for Mark. He's too much in a hurry. He wants to get us there. It just starts the beginning of the good news of Jesus Christ. It kind of echoes a little bit of that Genesis piece. And then he just launches right into John the Baptist preaching down by the water, calling everybody to a baptism of repentance, pointing the way ahead, saying, one is coming who is greater than I. I baptize you with water. He will baptize you with the Holy Spirit. And we're invited again to go back to that beginning, to see Jesus and John there in the water, to find ourselves standing around and coming to the water ourselves, and be reminded that we are claimed, and that yes, we are God's beloved children in this world that feels like it's totally messed up and totally flipped upside down. This is what the people in Acts forgot. They got the baptism of repentance down. That's good. It's good for us to confess our sin. I mean, I'm not perfect. I don't know if any of you are, but I struggle every day. It's good to have our sins forgiven, to name them, and hear the promise of grace and mercy for you and for me on account of Christ. We do that. But what they forgot was that the Spirit comes. The Spirit is the one guiding us. Just when you say to yourself, holy smokes, what's going on in the world? How are we going to fix it? What are we going to do about it? Where are we going right now? We are reminded that the Spirit is the one that guides us, actually. If you remember confirmation class, or maybe you're in it right now, you remember looking at the catechism, and we confess this in the catechism, that I believe by my own understanding or effort, I cannot believe in my Lord Jesus Christ or come to him. But the Spirit has called me by the good news of Jesus Christ, enlightened and given me gifts, kept me holy in the true faith, just as he calls, gathers, enlightens, and sanctifies the whole Christian church on earth. He keeps it in true faith. This is most certainly true. Man, that's helpful during these days to be reminded of that. Jesus comes down to the water. We're there to witness it. we're there to hear these promises of God once again. He emerges out of the water. The Spirit descends upon him and all of us. The Father speaks, "You are my beloved child." That is the promise for us in these uncertain days, when the world feels like it's totally messed up. When all the statistics we read just make us want to bury our hands in our heads. We go, "Sheesh, I don't know what to do next." And yet that is the promise for you and for me. We join Jesus down in that place, who gives you and me his very life to go out and share it with everybody else. What do we do in these days? Man, I would love to just give you a 5-point plan and tell you, if we just did this, well then, I'll tell you, we'd be sitting pretty good. But I can't do that, because I have no idea either. But what I can tell you is this, is the more I've been around, not just the last 4 years, or the last 14 years since we've gone on to other things, or since the last 23 years, 24 years since we met each other, or over the course of the last 48 years that I've been alive, is that the more we get busy, and the more technologically advanced we get, the more separated we feel, the more isolated we feel, the more disjointed life feels. And if you look at the statistics of all the people that are not affiliated with church anymore, or maybe they never were, this is what they say, is that there's not a place to really belong. And if I know St. Matthew like I think I do, it's one thing that this congregation does amazingly well, is to build community together, to be with each other when life really stinks right now, to pray for each other, to serve with each other, to think about what we're going to do that might be fun together, to build those friendships and those bonds, to live together this faith that's not ours, but is the gift of the Spirit in that promise of God, because we are God's beloved children. I mean, you know that, right? I hope you know that. What a gift you are. When Tammy and I pulled out of the parking lot 14 years ago, I've not really shared this with too many people, but I'm going to try to keep it together. I don't think Tammy's going to. When we pulled out of the parking lot, we wept. And we wept a lot. And we had to pull over, actually, and just kind of hold each other for a couple minutes, because we knew we would probably not experience a community like this again, or maybe not anytime soon. You have this amazing gift of bringing people together. The difference now between, say, when I was a kid and I knew everybody on my street, or even 20 years ago when we first met and were working together, is that people aren't looking for us. Here's the thing. As bad as those statistics tend to tell you and drive you into despair, the other thing about them are interesting, is that most people, if they are invited by a friend that they trust, would come. Now, maybe not if they're connected somewhere else. We don't necessarily need to be doing that. But you know the people in your life. I've got neighbors. You've got neighbors. You've got coworkers and friends. They're not connecting anywhere. They're trying to figure out this world that's flipped upside down too. And a simple invitation to come and see, a simple invitation to do what Jesus asked us to do, to go into all nations and baptize, and to go and make disciples. We might find new friends sitting next to each other. We might find new reasons to hope and give joy. We might give new reasons to look around at the world around us to see this beautiful thing that God continues to create in this space. While everybody looks around saying, scratching their heads, what is going on in there? And we can simply reply, inconceivable.